What's up guys, my name is Chris from Vo-Gus Prospecting. Today I want to teach you the number one thing I do on every single creek I go to prospect for gold that guarantees you that you're going to find something. To do that, I've got my cleanup sluice all set up to give you a bit of a diagram so you can understand the principles, and when you hit the creek you'll be able to look for the same things in nature.
The first thing you need to know about this is velocity. At the moment we have 1100 gallons an hour of water going over this bed. There is nothing impeding its flow. There's a little tiny bit of friction from the corrosion on the bottom, but there's not that much. So pretty much anything I put on this is going to move straight down the sluice. Let me demonstrate. This is full of ironstone and all the heavy materials you would normally associate with gold. And if we watch the water, you'll see the rocks just absolutely streaming down there, completely uninterrupted. I have to say this is a very clinical way of looking at it. Now you'll hear this in every single gold prospecting guide, whether it be on YouTube, a book you buy, or a friend at the pub, is that you're looking for low pressure. But this isn't strictly accurate. There's actually very little low pressure in a creek. In fact, Mad Scientist Prospector left a fantastic video on this on his channel on YouTube. I'll link that in the description below. What you're actually looking for is friction. That's right, the same sort of stuff you get when you rub your feet on the carpet, charge yourself up and zap your little sister. Well, that'd be static electricity, but it's the friction that generates it. That's the point. We have uninterrupted flow. What if we interrupt it? In working principle, this is called an obstruction in any given creek or river. But the same principle applies to inside bends, outside bends, pretty much anywhere you can find slack water. This is what you're looking for. At the start, we had an even sheen of water across the whole thing. But now we've introduced something that disrupts that flow. So now that it has to deal with this piece of obstruction, any piece of gold or rock traveling down the stream will have to deviate left or right. And as it deviates left or right, it's going to hit slack water. And what I mean is that edge. You would have seen a nice little teardrop shape in behind this rock. This is the difference between slow water and fast water. As a piece of rock or gold comes downstream, it's going to hit this water, and the turbulence here is starting to create a little bit of friction, which would make this rock slow down. So instead of going, say, 20 kilometers an hour down the stream, it might drop to 18. And as it hits 18, it will still have a bit of momentum, and that momentum will cause it to bounce. As it bounces, it'll go back into the fast water. It'll pick up a little bit of speed before dropping back down into that slower speed water. And as it does this, it'll either lose more and more velocity, enough velocity to drop into the low pressure, or most importantly, the high friction zone. Or as it bounces back into the high velocity water, it will gain enough momentum to keep going. And usually the things that have enough energy to keep going are the light sands. That's why heavy dense objects pack up behind rocks. They lose too much momentum in the slack water and they eventually sink. Now this leads me to two very important points. Not only should you be checking behind obstructions like this, but it's not necessarily directly behind the obstruction that you want to be looking. So remembering that Mr. Rock has slowly lost his bits of momentum and he has fallen in, he won't necessarily fall in directly behind the rock. In fact, there's not really a vortex here that sucks anything back and in. But most of the time you'll find that the material will take a little while to fall out, and you'll actually find the best stuff slightly away from the obstruction because of the time it took for it to bounce and settle out. In this particular case, I am talking about obstructions that sit above the floodwaters, or at the very least, they sit above the water line for most of the year. That's because if the water comes in over the top of the rock, you'll get a wave that comes in, down, and scoops everything out and pushes it a little bit further downstream. What you want to be checking is the mound of dirt further downstream and not directly behind that rock. So that's a different situation when it comes to obstructions. Again, we're looking at the principle of slack water and high friction, and this goes for anywhere that you would commonly find gold, such as inside bends. Let's turn the pump on and show you this in principle. So again, imagine this is all the dirt and gold traveling down the stream, and what we're looking for is an accumulation in behind this rock. Now it won't stay there because this is not the real world. There's nothing holding it back once it sits on the actual bed of the sluice. Here we go. There we have it. You can see that material traveling around the outside of that rock, and some of the heavier parts are starting to accumulate in that center. And you also note that they're not directly behind the rock, they accumulated further on. The other thing to take note of is that this wall here is also providing a lot of friction, just like your creek bed would be as well. Anywhere the water comes in contact with an object like this will create friction. So what you're looking for is slack water, but also the opportunity for a lot of turbulence to happen. And that's why we've got an accumulation just here. In real life, you'll have things like clay and fractured bedrock that will change this dynamic slightly, but the principle remains the same. If you can find this slack water, the high friction zones, that's where your gold will be. After filming this video, I trolled through my archives to find a clip that would show you this in real life action. In this clip, you can clearly see a chunk of bedrock sticking out of the creek with an accumulation of gravel behind it. And just remember, even though this is an obstruction in the middle of a creek, the same principle applies for inside bends, outside bends, or anywhere that there is slack water. So don't limit yourself for just looking for obstructions. So there you have it, the working principles of friction in water in relation to gold. Next time you hit the creek, don't think of it as looking for low pressure, but instead high friction. Where is the water going to come into the most amount of turbulence to slow it down? This is why it's a prime opportunity to go out when any creek or river that you prospect in is in flood. Take photos of areas that have slack water or back eddies and then work those edges, because the edges is where the gold sits. Hope you enjoyed this short little tutorial film. Make sure you give this video a bit of a share with some of the people that might need to see it so they can find more gold while they're out with you. And until next time, guys, we'll see you later.